CJ says sound question mark. Yeah. Come on. Somebody send me a message. Are we lagging that bad? Wow. We got a lot of lag tonight. Yeah. And everywhere. What do you mean? I'm about 5 seconds behind myself on screen. And I still don't have confirmation from the chat. What the heck? Are you sure we got audio?
It's working.
You can hear us?
Yeah, I checked it.
Okay. Oz is checking it one more time. Guys, hang tight. We have launched the Athena tonight. I feel bad that Oz doesn't get to be the one to announce it, but we're on a hot new studio. We are power strong on the West Coast because of Oz's great work. So thank you, Oz. Okay, so let's get started. Welcome to the Accidental Activist. I'm Chanda, Masta, your host, and my special, what was it? What was the word we used? Not special guest tonight is Chad Wilson. Spikel, yeah, my Spikel guest, Chad Wilson. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you might remember Chad. He ran as a Green Party candidate, right, for presidential.
That I did. I did. 2020.
2020, right? Yeah. So we'll have lots to talk about. Of course, we're going to talk about that as we get down in the deck. But for those who watch The Accidental Activist, I just sit down and chat with activists around the country and kind of get an insight on what, drove them to get involved, because I really don't feel like any of us are born activists. I think our circumstances and our environments make us activists. So Chad, I can't wait to hear your story. First, I got to do the fair use. Fair use, any clips we watch or go over are for educational and commissary purposes. So Oz, you want to take us into our first slide? I can't hear you both. I can? Oh, you can. Okay. Welcome, Al Walski. Hey, Dingo. Thank you, guys. CJ, Susan, welcome. Okay. Yeah, we're live. Fred Edwards. Okay, perfect. Okay. Yeah, I always, this is like, I love going through your guys' social media, anybody I have on, and just kind of grabbing pictures and snooping. I guess it's the snoop in me, that's how I do what I do, but I love these. So Chad, where'd you grow up?
Well, I grew up in Nashville. For the most part, I moved when I was about 5 for first grade. Before there, I was actually born in Kentucky, Harlan, Kentucky, East Kentucky.
Nice. I love Kentucky.
Indiana. And then, of course, like I said, moved to Nashville, Tennessee when I was about 5. I moved here because my dad is a Christian singer, preacher, evangelist. So it was kind of the hub. And, he wanted to kind of be in this area.
Right.
And, of course, Music City, that
right.
too.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I grew up here. And then the pictures you're looking at there, one of them was on the balcony that was from Miami. I lived in Miami for 5-6 years. I moved there. It was like about 25.
Right.
I lived in Atlanta for a year or two, something like that, and then came back to Tennessee. So
Tennessee, Tennessee is beautiful. Kentucky is beautiful. I think they're the most. I lived in Baton Rouge. I lived down south. So compared to down there, it's so beautiful to see hills and valleys. You don't get any of that when you're really down south. So in high school, I mean, growing up a Christian singer's son, who were you in high school? I mean, was that really a full reflection? I mean, did you debunk that system or?
Oh, this is really how do I make it short?
Right, I know you're trying to tell your life story in 2 sentences.
I grew up. Well, the funny thing is I grew up in an uber religious because it was Pentecostal.
So did I. I grew up Assembly of God, so I understand.
Oh, Church of God of Prophecy, yes. Assembly of God, I believe, broke off from that.
Yes.
So I grew up that my grandpa, my grandma, my uncle, like my whole family is basically in the church. So I went to revivals, to Bible studies, to church camps. And of course, I ran sound for my dad. I used to travel with him when I was younger and run sound and put the tape in for him when he was going to sing a song, and do levels and stuff like that. So I was, around it quite a bit. But the funny thing is a lot of kids that I grew up with weren't really religious at all. Right. And now they're the ones that are super religious. And I'm the one that's kind of backed off. I don't know if you my speaking and I've got like two tones, like kind of calm and then just full blown. And I
Right.
think that has to do with the whole preacher thing, growing up as a preacher's kid. And it's
Interesting.
just the way that I express, and the rhythm and stuff.
I think that was
Good.
probably that. I think you're probably around the same age as I am. I grew up, 70s, 80s, 80s, early 90s. And a religion coming out of the, 40s, 50s, and 60s, so many of our parents were so deeply rooted in religion. I mean, my grandmothers used to talk in tongues and lay hands. So, it freaked me out as a child. And my parents, my mother wasn't as religious as her mother, but, I was still given religion and I still did all the same things, revivals and, church. And as I got into high school, I grappled with the hypocrisy that I saw within the church and within the Christians that were supposed to be better than everybody else up on their big pedestals, and with the reality of life that I was living, especially in America in those times, the things we were facing, AIDS and whatnot. And I think that my instinct, and I don't know, I want to know if you kind of relate to this, was to bulk. Like, I got to shake this off and find my own person.
Uh, I went through a few different time periods or whatnot. I think in high school, my parents ended up getting divorced, so there was a kind of
Right.
a culture shock a little bit, because you're told one thing, and then as you see things play out and you
Yeah.
become older, it becomes a little tough, and then you're become a little more angry, I guess, at the people that told you all this stuff that aren't really living like that.
Right.
So I mean, I actually, um, uh, so I got to that point where, you know, yeah, I kind of had my butted heads at it, at the thing, because it's when you're raised and brought up in that world, that voice is always there or whatnot.
Yeah. It's
As
still
far
there for
as,
me. Yeah.
well, and that's, I mean, I wasn't allowed to go watch a movie until my first movie I watched at the movie theater was Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and at like in the late '80s, we couldn't wear
Right.
shorts to church, like
Yeah.
um, women couldn't wear jewelry, or I guess everybody couldn't wear jewelry, that kind of thing. So it was there was a lot of things going on, and as really got in high school and I started exploring, because that's when grunge was out really, and
Right. Grunge. Yeah. Yeah.
so I pretty much became, high school in the mid '90s is
Yeah.
when I got there. So that whole thing to me was, a big thing. I remember getting MTV when MTV actually played music videos, and
Right. Right.
just because I wasn't allowed to listen to secular music. When I growing up, I just kind of clung to oldies because that was easy. I didn't have to hear it. It was a sweet spot. So
Right.
I loved the Beach Boys. I loved Elvis. Of course, like Rod Stewart and Billy Joel and stuff like that. But
Right.
because my dad's a piano player, so those little things like that. You saw where, as I'm older now, I really understand it, where these little loopholes are, or where windows are, where it makes people feel more comfortable not being all the way within the religious parameters. Does that make
Right.
sense? Um, I guess that was the big part that I had issue with, is like, how can you say you love and then have this attitude towards Muslims, which that was kind of what got me um, activated a little bit really into politics, because I was getting triggered uh, uh, because of the whole ramping up, because
Nine
as
11. Yeah. Ramping up.
well, I mean, this was in 2012, 13, somewhere around there, because
Right.
during Obama's time, that's when they expanded the war. So what
Yep.
they have to do is they have to beat the fear drum about Muslim extremists. And so now in hindsight, I realize that, and I see how they use that to play on conservatives and Christians and the right and stuff like that. And so they build this, they have to have this fear drum in order to go through with it. And I didn't realize that I was, getting triggered and outraged off what they're trying to do, which is that's what they want. They don't, because they don't want anything. They wanted to make it about, oh, is it about being about the religion? Like they make the conversations real muddy. They don't really want to have people say, okay, well, you have a valid reason for being concerned or being afraid of, terrorism, when that's the propaganda that they push. If this is all you know about the Muslim community, then of course you're going to be afraid. So I felt like me going through that whole time, because I used to defend Obama. You know what I mean?
Me too.
I used, he talks so well, and and you fall into that trap is because people are saying it. You think that's the reason why people are saying it is because of the whole racist thing. And what I realized is that people had real valid criticisms that it was falling on deaf ears because they were being treated as if they were racist just for calling out, the things he was doing. So anyways, so that's kind of what really got me moving. And then of course with the 2016 election and seeing, everything that went down and knowing the Pied Piper strategy, because if you're against Trump, you were a Clinton supporter. If you were against Clinton, you were a Trump supporter. And it was like, so I ended up getting to the point where I'm starting to understand the pulse and thread of how they create these arguments, pressure or boiling plate issues for people to go at each other, and it just keeps it going. It's a cycle. That's their game.
Yeah, that is their game. So you followed in your dad's footsteps, it looks like, and got into music.
Just not Christian music.
Right.
I did rock. Rock was kind of my first thing to really get into, well, besides, singing in church and stuff like that, but was the first music to pretty much write and make. I had a rock band in high school, and we did a little bit at the beginning, early 20s. And then that kind of fizzled out, just because, if you're not on the same page, it's hard to have a band, in general.
No, let me tell you, I used to have a production company in the 90s, and my first husband, two of his brothers are in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They were in the Sonics, a famous grunge band from the 60s. And their other brother was the bass player for Heart. So I jumped headfirst into music in the 90s. And yeah, I know everything about not being able to keep a band on the same page, let me tell you. And going through your timeline in your Facebook was fun because I could see the influences of the times on your pictures.
Oh, the changes and stuff?
Yeah. Definitely.
So yeah, it wasn't until I moved to Miami, 25, that I got back into music because I was doing title searching. I actually opened up a title company, so I was in real estate.
Okay, then about what happened in 2008.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, it's funny being on the other side of things too, is seeing how the hustle works too, and how they were doing it. One of the things that they were doing was basically when they appraise a house, they pull comps from other houses around the area, right?
Yeah, right.
So what they do is they would shoot up the appraisal, right, and then pull comps from the highest houses, and then they would get like a few mortgages at one time, and all as in owner occupied kind of thing, and then they would go ahead and pull out the equity because they'd get as it was the bubble was building up, they just pull the money out of it automatically and then put it into the, so it was just interesting seeing, all these different lanes and stuff like that. Because
which we're going to see again. Absolutely. I believe in the next couple of years.
And that's the trickle down. That's what the trickle down is. It's the hustle, right? It says, okay,
still your equity, basically.
If you're willing to play the game, that's what I mean by the trickle down economics. If you play their hustle, you can make money off of it. But see, that's the whole thing, is that the people that are playing in the hustle are the ones that get in trouble, not the people at the top who really screw people over.
Right.
Um,
So what got you involved in the Green Party? I mean, you kind of talked about what spurred you into politics, but what really built you up to say, that's it, I'm getting in this race, I'm fighting back?
well, I think part of it had to do, well, first of all, growing up in the church, growing up in that kind of environment where there's always like a dare to be good situation
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. So I always felt like I had a calling that in that manner to, to want to change things, and I
Yeah,
understand
me
that
too.
music and art and entertainment is the vehicle. I mean, it always has been in order to reach people. So that was my whole point, is to get in. It's like, okay, well, I understand these pieces. uh, how do we apply that to the party? Because that's what the party was missing. It's missing the branding. It's missing
Yeah.
the creative outlet to make people feel comfortable. Um, and I voted for Stein in 2016. Uh, I
Okay.
was I was really, of course, I was going for Bernie, and that whole thing was the Birdie Bernie. I always say the Birdie Bernie is when the peak Bernie, when I felt like there was a real special thing going. And then, of
Yeah.
course, once he bent the knee, it was over at the
I
at
can
the
almost remember the
convention.
moment that it was gone. It
Yeah,
was in Philadelphia. It just was like that. It was gone.
and
Well,
then
actually,
people,
it happened before we went to Philly because we all kind of knew coming into Philly.
well, but see that was when that weekend is when they released the WikiLeaks thing.
I
So
know, I
so
know.
for me, I thought, oh shit, here's the proof, the evidence that
Yeah,
they
we
cheated.
were there. We were at the
This is
DNC.
the
Like, what are
pressure.
you guys gonna do about
This is
it?
the pressure right here. So that was the key part that really started changing me, because it was, at the end of the day, it's about what are you, where do you draw the line? How far are you willing to go? And there's never been a position anybody's ever been in to say, hey, fuck you, I've got the proof here, you cheated, come at me, try to come at me.
Yeah.
Bernie had that position. He could have
He
done
did,
so
and he
much.
had the people power.
Oh, and he had the people, and he knew that. So to me, that was revealing. So I just started going through the things, and then seeing Russiagate, how
Yeah,
that, you know, and then the Trump derangement syndrome, which I went through
yeah,
a
yeah.
brief point of that, because it's hard
I did
not
too. I think we
to
all
get
agree that we did.
it just, and I call people Trump Christians. That was the big thing, because I
You're a
was going
Trump
after.
Christian. I call them
Yeah.
fundies. Oh, you a
Oh,
fundy.
but the crazy thing is at this point, I have a lot more compassion, because
I do too.
Russiagate, for instance, right? Be there, his supporters were gaslit are still being gaslit with Russiagate 5 years later,
Yeah.
and they never had a chance to really be critical, because they're too busy defending real shit, which the FISA warrant, the the
Yeah.
Russiagate,
The
you
Steele
know,
dossier was bullshit. Yeah.
like all these different things start to play in, because it's about the processing of all these informations, because the truth is out there, you know what I mean? But the truth is
Mhm.
in the is in it's in the pulse, it's in the mechan it's not. I don't I don't know how to put my finger on it exactly. And that's what I've been trying to figure out. So that's what's been so hard about running. And then after the crash, is because I'm all these things I've taken in and learned, just
Right.
trying to process it and understanding what needs to be done.
Yeah.
Um, so it was just an emotional ride to go through that whole process.
Yeah.
Um, let me get back to the Green Party. So after I voted for Jill Stein, I started getting on this thing called Montauk. I don't know if you've been on or heard
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
Montauk.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I know Jimmy.
um, so there was a bunch of us from across the country that would get on there and talk about all sorts of stuff. I mean, people kind of had different, political alignments a little bit, but it was a really cool setup for people to actually voice their concerns and kind of talk things out, because a lot of times you know what you want to say, kind of, but you don't know how to say it, and sometimes you have to say it 1,000 times, and then somebody else kind of condense it for you to make you understand it. Like, I mean, because it's the process. It's not in just one day. So, and then William Pounds brought Jesse Ventura to the table and said, hey, he's getting publicity with TMZ, talking about the Green Party, saying, hey, I want to run the Green Party, and have, and it was the more attention that the Green Party has been getting. So me, James, and William started working on these things called the Venturathon. And this is what really got me into the Green Party, because the idea was to say, okay, well, we know all these issues are wrong with the Green Party. We mapped them out, and you could take those same issues, go to the People's Party, go to the Democratic Party, go to your school, go to your church. It's the same. There a lot of this. It's a behavioral thing because of this hierarchy, the way that we value people.
I think that people don't understand, who haven't ever been on the inside workings of these parties, the infrastructure of these parties, and the way, because they're charters. They're a club, right? For most of them. And they write their own laws, and they write their own bylaws of who can join them, how they can join them. You can't be a member of a different party. You can't do this. You can't do that. And, people don't realize that those are held by, like, you don't think that your little central committee in your little podunk town is being controlled by the DNC, right? Chucky Schumer is not controlling your DNC meeting. Yeah, but they actually are, because it all trickles downhill. It goes to the state central committee, and then it goes down to, your little central committees. And ultimately they have control over the narrative, over the platforms, over what's going to be allowed. And I went into the Green Party as soon as I came out of the Dems in 2016, when we got back with Jill Stein. And I found that the infrastructure inside the Green Party was actually more cliquey and had more stringent rules than even the goddamn Dem Party, because they didn't want to be taken over by the Dems. So they literally had their hands out stopping the tens of thousands of Bernie supporters, or maybe 100,000s, that were trying to come into the Green Party. Like, whoa, you guys aren't welcome here. You can't just come flood our party because you're not happy with your party, was basically the mentality that we were met with. And my Green Party in my local area was basically non-existent. The woman who had the bank account for it was the vice chair of the goddamn Dems. So trying, okay, fine, we'll start our own Green Party in our area. We threw a meeting and 2 people showed up. So, and we're talking September of 2016. If I can't get people to a Green Party meeting in September of 2016, the first fucking week, then we're done. There's nothing we can do here. So I immediately moved into, I'd always been supporting PIP, which is Progressive Independent Party, Eric Webb-Loss. But I could see that there was so much infighting there that wasn't going to be the party. And I was the chair of this really big progressive group, and all these people wanted to know where the fuck to go. Are we Greens now? Are we libertarians? So I made it my mission to go into these groups and figure out where we were actually going to bubble up, do the most good, putting our energy into. And so we went to the People's Party with Nick Brana. And I don't talk shit on Nick. I just say that the infrastructure is not there. We saw it loud and freaking clear that he didn't have a pathway to ballot access. He wasn't thinking about it. I think that the movement for a People's Party might actually be successful if somebody would come in and actually start fucking working in there. I mean, there's volunteers that file through. I've known so many. I've been so many. But the fact is just because you've got ballot access in California, you got a few candidates across the country, doesn't make you a viable party. And that we could take the machine on and challenge the machine. And this is where I disagree with Jimmy Dore. I don't think that any party in the United States will rise up. Do you?
Well, I think that the point of a party now is to apply pressure and in just one of the areas. I don't think that it is the only vehicle for change. I think it's the way that we have to do it in order to get people's attention, because for some reason, unless you do it from an election pulpit, a lot of times people aren't listening.
Yeah.
And
Hey, Jimmy.
I realized that, I realized that, people hated that I ran for president and I hadn't ran for anything else. It was like so vile. Like, why don't you try to run something you can win? Like, what, you think you're going to win president? Like, wouldn't this be the best one to run? Because you know that, you're
You're
not
going to
going to
get the
win.
most people listening. Right.
And so and that's what I thought. I thought that I was going to get all this help, right? And I was going to say, okay, here's all these pieces. How do I help organize it and then put it into a format that makes it easy for people? So, and that was the thing that I had issue with Nick Brana. During the primary, I knew AOC was bad news.
Right.
I was on a call on like on a call with some activists or whatnot. And there was 5 to 10 people, whatever. And basically his whole thing was, we want to build it up to where Bernie, and then they come to the party. I'm like, I was like, the whole point is to get away from them. You don't want them at your party. As soon as you say you want them, you've lost your whole thing.
Which we've absolutely seen with all of them, every single one.
So you can't even placate. You literally have to draw the line in the sand and say, these people are corrupt. We don't want them anywhere near us. This type of behavior is wrong. And that's the problem. It's the behavior that we allow because they're people that are close to us or that we know. And for instance, like, and not to, because there's only a couple things that I have issue with Jimmy.
That's the only, like, Nick's a nice guy. I've met Nick. I've met his family. They're nice people. They really fucking are. I really think that Nick is in this fight for the same reasons that a lot of us are. But I think that he found something in this movement that he didn't have before. And that was kind of, his star power, and that he feeds off that ego too much. I think that that's his driving force. Whatever.
It's your baby.
It's my opinion. Yeah.
Well, that's how they treated. Of course, the way that they've done with the Green Party, right? It's infiltrators.
Yes.
Every organization, every party has a time. What is it? There's only so long that it's going to be viable because they will have people infiltrate it. And so that's the whole idea about having all these things set up so you're ready to do the same thing in a new party in a different place, or whatnot.
Well, I'm close to Socialist Alt, which is Shama Sawant's group. I mean, she doesn't call it her group, but Socialist Alt really has made amazing strides in the Pacific Northwest for the amount of members that it has. But it's really focused on local races, which I think is great. She's proven that by focusing on those local races, like city council, that you can really put pressure on the system. And shit, she's been taking Bezos on for the last 6 years single-handedly, basically. I think that if we're going to launch a party, we're looking too big to just try to strategize like, well, we're just going to get all these volunteers in every state and they'll just launch it. I mean, I have databases from PIP and, Progressive Independent Party, where at that time, it was Bernie. We had tens of thousands of volunteers across the country, but the organization it takes to make something like that viable, it has to hit at the right time. You got to have the right organization and you got to have the right message. And, we saw a good little glimpse of that with Bernie, and then it was gone. And I don't think we're ever going to get that back from anything that we have right now, sadly.
Well, Bernie keeps talking about paying taxes, putting more tax.
He's keeping them asleep. He's keeping those people lulled to sleep inside the Democratic fucking Party.
Well, and that's it's the messaging. That's the whole point. He's not saying to do the right things. He's like, oh, we need to tax them more, rather than saying, okay, let's change the system that allows them to exploit labor this much. You know what I mean? Let's prevent them from, so the messaging is key. And I think you're right about that. In my view, I look at it as like, your best bet is to go to Trump supporters, go to conservatives, and say, "Are you guys ready to prosecute Obama, prosecute the Clintons?"
Right.
Really go? No, I'm serious.
I know. Like that would never happen though. No, they don't. They don't snitch on each other. That's why the Republicans and the Democrats get along so well. They're two wings of the same bird.
Well, the point is they did a good job at ramping up Trump's base. Just to keep spinning the wheels, and that's the whole point I was saying.
Oh yeah, no, I get what you're saying. Yeah, they do.
The QAnon, right? So they associate everything with Trump.
Even now,
to dismiss it. And same thing. Yeah. Same thing with Fox News and and what's his name? I keep forgetting his name. The guy that everybody hates. I can't.
Alex Jones, Anderson.
No, Anderson. Anderson. Is that right? His name?
Anderson Cooper, yeah.
No, what?
Hannity.
No, what's the guy that Jimmy goes on? I forget.
Tucker. I actually don't dislike Tucker. He can be a racist shit, but a lot of times he's the only one that is dropping a few truths on mainstream media.
And I think the whole purpose with that is, this is how I'm seeing it.
He's allowed, yeah.
Well, the whole point is for him to say it, so it keeps shit libs asleep. Oh, Tucker Carlson said it. Oh, Fox News is saying it. So let's associate it with them. So that means it's not real. And you see it with even these the loony. You see, I got so many things to say here. That's how you see it with these faux aggressive leftists or whatnot, how bent out of shape they get when you're saying your message on the other team's platform.
But they're owned by the same owner. Both companies, both CNN and Fox, are owned by the same overlords.
Didn't Disney buy Fox? Like, I thought Disney bought Fox.
I have the breakdowns. We have so many of them. It's just one big conglomerate clusterfuck of these corporations owning, because one's a subsidiary of another. And the charts are so big, we can't even put them on our screen and have people actually be able to make out the names of the companies. That's how diluted it is.
You have to do one
tree. But I want to say I feel like I have neglected to point out one big flaw in the whole party politics thing, and that is, how do you run a viable party in a political system that is rigged?
Well, that's the base you run off. The first point is to say, hey, our government is corrupt. Yeah. Two is that we don't have a fair election. There's all these different mechanisms in place to fuck you.
Yeah.
And that has to be the bottom line from where we start. And the other thing is it's about the approach. And I've been thinking a lot about this, because the idea is understanding that we've all been lied to. The propaganda is so heavy is that we don't even know all the parts that we've been lied to. Yeah. We don't. So the idea is to understand that, so we can say, okay, well, if we're really going to move forward, then we have to move forward knowing that we have to reassess a bunch of shit, and taking the right perspective, I think is going to be easier to, and that's why I say conservatives or Trump supporters, to get them on board with, the censorship, the propaganda, and the corruption, is because in real time, they've been gaslit the last few years, and they see it. And I feel like they're closer to understanding the truth, to say, okay, well, you see how you were lied to and gaslit about right here, this issue. See how you were the same mechanism gave you your opinion here about this issue. And so that's we just have to be practical in a way where we get, including myself, this is heavy shit.
Well, that's why Julian Assange is one of those bridging topics that I like to bring up when I'm talking to a conservative Trump supporter. You wouldn't know these things if it wasn't for Julian Assange. And these are the terrible things that you were told in 2013, 14, 16, leading up to when he started exposing these things. You were told that he's a bad guy, he's a rapist, he's this, he's that. And so you were fed that narrative right off the bat to hate him. I remember back in the early 2000, 2012, 2013, thinking, who is this Julian Assange guy? I think I like him, but I don't know. The media is telling me he's a bad dude, So I think pointing out exactly what you're saying, how they were gaslit on one issue and pointing out how it was on another. See, I grabbed these memes off your page. They're cute.
So that was an email that I got because I had signed up for the email list for the Movement for People's Party. So
Nina, broke my heart.
So this is what's wrong with it. So playing this game it is to pretend like Nina is really against the establishment. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. You're still and that's the whole thing is, Nina protects the establishment, and the shit libs protect Nina, that kind of thing. So it's like this whole game. But if you notice this, the point is say, okay, well, Nina Turner's running for Congress. Now, they're not on the ballot in Ohio yet.
Right.
But so she will have to run as a Democrat. No, Nina, if Nina was serious about it, she would say, I got the juice. Yeah. I can get us ballot access.
Yeah, I don't need your party. Yeah,
I'll go to all these black leaders and say, fuck the Democrat. Like, see, the whole point is.
But that's another issue in our country is black leaders are just faithfully following the Obama Clinton machine that's still in place across the country.
Well, and so I've really been, trying to understand to the mechanics, because the way Black culture is commoditized and it's exploited.
It's exploited, I know.
And the white is the biggest purchasers of Black culture. They
right. Look at that concert this weekend in Houston. That was a huge amount of it was marketed to kids. It was marketed to young white boys.
And so my point is there's a lot of interesting power dynamics going on, and they have to keep shifting it in order to maintain their power. And that's where I've been trying to understand how it works, and seeing how because they have to have their political figures,
What do you think is going to be the outcome of the Kyle Rittenhouse? I mean, we saw Al Sharpton in the courtroom sitting with the family, and the judge or the lawyers bombasted him saying, oh, that's just getting public opinion to give sympathy to this family. Do you think that we're in for a couple of rough weeks if the verdict's not what,
Here's the thing is I think I think their whole purpose was to make sure that footage was not seen by the public until later on, because they wanted to keep people's around here, and so that way is when it is shown, people will just dismiss what that means in the timeline of things. So like you say, those 2 weeks of rallying out, they need that to distract from how shit of a job they're doing and all this propaganda.
Yeah.
They have to keep people's attention, and when people are getting, so that's why you start, it's a playbook. That's the thing is we're not doing enough, is we're not really understanding and studying how they move, how the elite people think. Like this is an ideology. Like we need to understand like the ruling class, how power thinks, how they know that I can put money here and I can just make this innuendo here, and then that will set this whole chain of events going this way. This is social engineering. This is it's so real, and I don't people don't they don't understand it. And I don't understand it. Like that's what I'm trying to understand, I guess.
I want to shout out to our chat real fast. So we got Jimmy. Jimmy's actually in the chat. Hey, Vanatalk. Who else is over here? Dingo. Welcome. Steve Cutler. Lucky Burrito. I hope you're feeling better, Lucky. I know you hurt yourself. Yeah, they're having you got Jimmy going off in the chat. Good stuff.
We spend hours and hours on these talks. Like with Zoom, before Zoom was like super popular.
Yeah, right.
And I mean hours, 5-6 hours at a time when we'd have these roundtables. That's okay. So here's another thing. What Jimmy did with Force to Vote needs to be examined a lot more
Hell yeah.
than people have been doing. It was so powerful, and the principle, and it was similar to what kind of went down in the Green Party, because what happens is we have to find those checkmate positions where it pushes people into a corner where they have to show their ass. And that's what Jimmy did. And I learned this in 8th grade, Persuasive Strategies by Coach Mays, Clay Mays, and I'm sure he'll be happy to hear that. When persuading someone to do something, a lot of times is having the solution or having the answer ready while you're asking the question. Or understanding where the concerns are going to be. Like, say you wanted to go to the mall and your mom was going to say, okay, well, clean your room first, right?
Yeah.
Or do your homework. Well, if it's going to be easier to say, I know I needed to clean my room and I'm going to do it here, and then I got my homework, I'm going to do it here, but I want to go ahead and go to the mall now. If you go ahead and give your rebuttal to the things that they asked prior.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And Jimmy did that. And it was so needed, because we had been slogging through from 2016 till Force the Vote with this big tent thing going on, right? Like, we're all just liberals, we're all Democrats, we're all blue, we're all behind AOC, we're all behind, Nancy Pelosi. We can't Trump bad, Trump's destroying the world. And so we kind of got shoved in with them. And it was, I don't know how many times I was just like, how the fuck do we get away from all of these phonies that are in here? I'm sorry, you are not fighting for the same thing that I'm fighting for. When you're telling me we're addicted to oil, get over it. There was just small examples like that. So when this broke that Jimmy was doing this, I remember Oz and I were on air and we both agreed that this was the best thing that was going to weed out all of the fucking faux progressives that we had been dealing with for so long. And that's exactly what it did in my book. It just,
but it did so much. And it revealed so many people anyways, but the principle is about organizing and getting people to say, okay, here's a moment of action, specific moment of action, do it, or, and have all these things mapped out. That was my point. And that's what he did. He had the platform, any issue, he was able to swat it down, even though, and then of course that's where they amassed, because they kept doing their bullshit. They kept going that circular thing. So this is the one thing that I think can be different from this point on. This is one thing that I think needs to happen. So when it does happen, the next and what they're doing with the Fred Hampton leftists, they're doing the strike.
It's a general strike.
But it's about a meeting. It's called the summit. They should have tried to syndicate that on as many as different platforms at the same time. Because the idea is to, as we start putting out information and start really going hard at some of these things, we need to be syndicating all at the same time. If we're going to do a round table of all these progressive voices or people talking, we need to stream it not just to Jimmy Dore's page, or you know what I mean? We need to stream it to everybody's page.
And that was that was part of the reason Roar was, the inception of Roar was, we need more people talking to each other. I mean, everybody that was in independent media through 2016 through, just like maybe a year ago, was very cliquey. I mean, only a few would hang out with each other. And if one would come on somebody's show, well, then they were accused of, thinking exactly the same way as that person thought. And I see a heck of a lot more people coming together, especially in the independent media, to do exactly what you're saying.
I'm looking at it from the social media aspect, like that's the difference. The one difference that we've never had before in any other party, any other thing, is that we have our phones, we can connect right here, right away. This is direct action. We just haven't figured out how to, and part of that has to do with leadership, right? They don't want any clear leaders, and they do.
But we don't want any clear leaders. I mean, honestly, I don't think that a revolution can work with, maybe one clear leader.
I see. I don't know. I don't know. When has it? Without,
Yeah,
without having,
being
because
tyrannical or
well,
yeah.
symbolism is important. That's why design. That's
The
why
elite think it is for sure.
marketing. Look at the language that they use. So again, the defund the police and
Yeah,
the
yeah,
Black Lives Matter.
yeah.
Um, Everything that they use, and so here's another thing. So I got triggered myself about the whole thing about the Black Lives Matter, and the all lives matter thing. I got into it for a while
Guilty. Yep.
back in the day, and I've since gotten to a point where I was like, wait a second, these people have been propagandized. They've the government has been using the flag. They've been using all these patriotic things to hide their crimes.
Yeah.
And the people that have died because of these crimes, they have an emotional connection to this music. They have emotional connection to these things. Even if it were rooted in this, you have to acknowledge that people feel a certain way. And that was the whole point of the protest, right? What I realized is like, we're arguing, one person's arguing about how they're protesting, and the other one's arguing about why they're protesting. Of course, we're never going to have the right conversation. But if the left were smart, they would say, I acknowledge, I understand why you feel that way. Why shouldn't we understand? We don't have to condone people's actions, but we need to understand how the system builds it up, because it's not just this, it's not just this system of white supremacy type thing that is being used to kind of, you hear it used so much that you miss out on all these dynamics and how they propagandize identities, and that you're seeing it. It's identity politics, and then they've been doing it. They know how to say, okay, well, how do we separate people? How do we create a boogeyman in each thing? And
put us in our boxes.
Right, and that's the point, is that everybody is victim to that, regardless. You know what I mean? And
it's getting worse under COVID. And so I actually want to move to the next slide. Right. I want to get into a good conversation with you about the jab and, the Rona, the beer virus, but we can't do that on YouTube. I know you guys are having a blast over there on the YouTube, but if you guys want to hop over and join us on the Rockfin, I'm sorry. Or I mean, Rumble. Yeah, we're on Rumble now. Let's get ready to rumble. Yeah. So you guys head over, and that way we can, we don't make the rules. The YouTube makes the rules. And I don't want Roar to be punished because we dropped some truths. So we're going to just head over to the Rockfin. You guys can join us over there. Oz, will you drop the link in the chat once you pull us over?